Hello everyone, and welcome back to today's video on the Windy City Politics and History channel. In today's video, we are going to be taking my monthly look at the 2024 United States Senate elections. I'm taking a look at these elections every month until 2024 Election Day and making a prediction, making a forecast based on the polling and historical trends and what I think the outcome is going to be in each Senate race. And without further ado, let's get right into talking about the 2024 Senate elections, the Class 1 Senate seats. And this is a challenging map for Democrats because I'm going to categorize each state as its incumbent party. And as you can see, the Democrats are defending some challenging turf here because they have 3 seats in states that Donald Trump carried in 2020, Ohio, West Virginia, and Montana, as well as an additional 5 seats in states that Joe Biden carried by under 5 points in 2020, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada. And all of those states Joe Biden actually carried by under 3 points as well. So a challenging map for Democrats. However, they do have strong incumbents. Sherrod Brown is a strong incumbent. Jon Tester, strong incumbent. Joe Manchin, strong incumbent. And those are the 3 senators from Ohio, Montana, and West Virginia, respectively. And you look at that, and that presents a problem for Republicans because Republicans might be able to pick up a seat in Michigan in an election year, especially with incumbent Senator Debbie Stabenow retiring. However, they're going to have to spend their resources in Ohio, in West Virginia, in Montana, in states that are safe red at the federal level, but at the state level can sometimes vote for a Democrat. And that's not to say that it would be an easy feat for Republicans to pick up a seat in Michigan. It would not be, because 1, Michigan has been trending blue. 2, there's been a lot of infighting in the Michigan GOP, and the Michigan GOP is not functioning very well and not ready to win elections at this stage. And additionally, Elissa Slotkin is, I would argue, the best candidate that the Democrats could have selected to run for this open Senate seat in Michigan. And more on that later. But Elissa Slotkin is a moderate and has a national security background, so experience in government, and has won a competitive House seat 3 times and earned a bipartisan endorsement in 2022 from Liz Cheney. So, very strong candidate in Michigan. And once again, I'll talk about Michigan more later, but that is not going to be an easy pickup for Republicans. And I do not think Republicans are going to pick up Michigan. I think it will be likely blue. So that's a little hint as to what one of the states is going to be. But anyway, let's start with the safe Democratic states. So starting off, we have Hawaii, we have Maryland, we have Delaware, we have Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, and Maine. Vermont and Maine both have independent senators, Bernie Sanders and Angus King, respectively, who caucus with the Democratic Party in the Senate. And Bernie Sanders, he runs in the Democratic primary, but he's an independent. But regardless, Vermont is safe blue. Bernie Sanders will win re-election if he runs. If not, another Democrat will win there. And then in Maine, Angus King actually has a challenger to his left, who is a Democrat. Angus King is an independent, former governor of Maine, current senator. And I assume that Angus King will have a challenger to his right as well, who will be a Republican. And that will be very similar to 2018 when Angus King won re-election by 20 points. So I'm categorizing Maine as safe blue for that reason. And now moving on over to the West Coast, in California, incumbent Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein is retiring. The 3 major candidates currently in the race to replace her are all in the House of Representatives, current congresspeople. Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, and Barbara Lee are the 3 major candidates vying to replace Dianne Feinstein as of now. And California utilizes a top 2 primary system in which all candidates, regardless of party, run on the same ballot in the primary, and the top 2 advance to the general election. I think we could see a Democrat versus Democrat general election in California. We've seen that the past few cycles, with the exception being 2022 when there was a Democrat versus a Republican. However, it's going to be safe blue regardless. California is a strong Democratic state, and Dianne Feinstein's successor will, I'd say, nearly 100% be a Democrat. And now moving on to another state that is safe blue that I want to talk about, and that is Minnesota. Incumbent Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar is extremely popular in the state of Minnesota and won her re-election campaign in 2018 by around 24 points. Joe Biden carried the state in 2020 by around 7, so she is able to earn bipartisan votes. Republicans vote for her. And in the same cycle, there was a special election in Minnesota in which now Senator Tina Smith won the remainder of Al Franken's term, which expired in 2020. She also won re-election in 2020, but Amy Klobuchar outperformed Tina Smith by around 14 points in 2018. So that just goes to show that she is going to win re-election by a safe margin in 2024. And then one final safe Democratic state, and that is Washington. And for Washington, I want to talk about some of the polling data. There was a poll taken 874 likely voters conducted by Public Policy Polling, sponsored by the Northwest Progressive Institute, and that little blue diamond there means that is a Democratic-leaning organization. However, it's Washington, which is a Democratic-leaning state, so chances are it's going to be a safe blue state, especially in a presidential election year with Joe Biden carrying the state by around 17 points in 2020. But incumbent Senator Maria Cantwell is currently at 50%. Former Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler is at 35%, and I do not believe she has declared candidacy yet, although she has expressed interest, and 15% of voters are undecided, but Cantwell is already up by 15. So I feel comfortable categorizing Washington as safe Democratic for 2024, especially since it's a presidential election year, as I said. And Patty Murray, the other Democratic senator from Washington, won her re-election campaign by around, I think it was 12 to 14 points. I don't remember exactly in 2022. Although that was expected to be somewhat competitive, she was expected to win re-election by around 10 points. She won by around 12 to 14. So she outperformed expectations there, which just shows that Washington's going to be a safe Democratic state. And now getting into the safe Republican states, Wyoming, North Dakota, both the special election with the seat currently held by former governor and current senator Pete Ricketts in Nebraska, and the actual Senate seat, that's the Class 1 Senate seat, up for grabs in 2024, which is held by incumbent Senator Deb Fischer. Both of those are going to be safe Republican. Tennessee, incumbent Senator Marsha Blackburn, safe Republican. Mississippi, incumbent Senator Roger Wicker, safe Republican. And then Utah, incumbent Senator Mitt Romney, regardless of whether Mitt Romney is the eventual Republican nominee or not, is going to be safe Republican. I believe that the Utah Speaker of the House, who is a Republican, has either announced a primary challenge to Romney or he has publicly expressed interest in challenging Senator Romney in the Republican primary. He would run to Senator Romney's right if he were to run. And now I want to move into the category that's high likely. So likely states that are going to be somewhat competitive, but not necessarily in play. In a wave year, they could be in play. And for the Democratic Party, those states are New Mexico, Virginia, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. In New Mexico, you have incumbent Democratic Senator Martin Heinrich. He was reelected by a safe margin in 2018. I believe that's going to be a bit lower because in 2018, Gary Johnson, who ran as a Libertarian, he is the former Republican governor of New Mexico, he pulled a decent amount of Republican support away from the Republican candidate in that race. So I believe that New Mexico will be likely blue, but not very competitive at all. Virginia, incumbent Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat, won re-election by around 15 points in 2018. I believe that could be a little more competitive in 2024. And when I say competitive, I mean under 15 points. I don't really think the Republicans have a shot of flipping Virginia, especially given the fact that Tim Kaine is an excellent campaigner and Glenn Youngkin, who is the most well-known statewide Republican in West Virginia, has not really shown an interest in running for Senate. And the Republicans are trying to recruit Hung Kao, who ran for the House of Representatives in 2022. And he has expressed interest in running for Senate. And I honestly think this will be a pretty easy Democratic hold. I believe Tim Kaine will win by around 12 points. I believe Biden will probably win the state by around 10 points. And I think Tim Kaine will outperform Biden, but just because it's a presidential election year and you'll see less ticket splitting and less members of one party voting over another. In 2018, there were more Democrats who voted than Republicans. I believe that Virginia is going to be likely blue, but not necessarily competitive. And then New Jersey, incumbent Senator Bob Menendez won re-election in 2018, and I believe he will run again. West Virginia is a state that can elect Republicans. They had a Republican governor in Chris Christie up until 2018. In 2017, the gubernatorial election, Phil Murphy won. And Phil Murphy won his re-election campaign in 2021 by around 3 points. So West Virginia can be somewhat swingy at the state level. However, I don't believe this will be competitive at all. I think Bob Menendez will win re-election, probably by around 12 to 14 points. And then lastly, Pennsylvania, incumbent Senator Bob Casey Jr. He is popular. He won his re-election campaign in 2018 by around 13 points. He's never really been in an extremely competitive race. And also, if you look at the polling for the U.S. Senate, Pennsylvania, from 286 registered voters and 359 registered voters, a BC rating from 538. If he were to run against David McCormick, Bob Casey would be up by 7 points, 42 to 35. If he were to run against Doug Mastriano, who is the failed Republican gubernatorial candidate in 2022, who Josh Shapiro defeated by 15 points, Bob Casey would be up 16 points as of right now. And polling has shown that Mastriano and McCormick, if they faced off against each other in the primary, which is possible given that they have both expressed interest in running for this seat, polling shows that Doug Mastriano would be leading David McCormick. So I feel comfortable categorizing Pennsylvania as likely Democrat and not very competitive at all. And now moving on to the Republican likely states, which are not going to be necessarily competitive, and those are Missouri and Indiana. And I'm going to start by talking about Indiana. Incumbent Senator Mike Braun is retiring in 2024 to run for governor. He was first elected in 2018, defeating then Senator Joe Donnelly, a Democrat, by around 5 points. And I think this is going to be likely Republican. I don't think it will necessarily be that competitive, but just because it's an open seat, I'm going to categorize it as likely. I believe it will be slightly under 15 points. I believe it'll be around 14 points for a margin of victory. And then moving on to Missouri, incumbent Senator Republican Josh Hawley was first elected in 2018, defeating then Senator Democrat Claire McCaskill by around 6 points. And I believe that the Democrats actually have a good potential candidate here in Lucas Kunce, who could make it somewhat competitive, who could make it somewhat of a headache for Senator Hawley running for re-election. I don't think it will necessarily be that competitive. I believe we'll see a similar result in 2024 to what we saw in 2022, where the Republican wins by around 13 points. Although I don't believe it will be that competitive, I don't believe that Josh Hawley will win his second term by more than 15 points. And now moving on to the likely states that are going to be likely towards one party, but competitive. And there's one Democratic state for this and one Republican state for this. And the Republican state is the state of Florida. Incumbent Republican Senator Rick Scott was first elected in 2018, defeating then Senator Democrat Bill Nelson by around 10,000 votes, which was under a point. So a very competitive race. However, as we saw in 2022, Florida shifted drastically to the right, and Ron DeSantis, the incumbent governor, won his re-election campaign by 19 points, and Marco Rubio, the incumbent senator, also a Republican, won his re-election campaign against a moderate Democrat by around 17 points. However, I don't believe that Rick Scott will be able to replicate those wins, especially in a presidential election year, so I think Florida will be somewhere in the ballpark of 7 to 10 points in favor of Rick Scott. And then moving on to the Democrat likely state that is probably going to be competitive, but is still going to be likely Democratic, and that is the state of Michigan. Incumbent Senator Debbie Stabenow is retiring after 4 terms. She is not seeking a 5th term. And the Democratic presumptive nominee is Elissa Slotkin, a current congresswoman. She has won 3 elections to a competitive House seat in central Michigan, so she has shown that she is able to run a strong campaign. She's a moderate, and she speaks to the issues of a lot of the working class swing voters in Michigan. I believe that she won't only win, I believe that she will outperform the Democratic presidential nominee in the state in 2024. And I believe that she'll win probably by around 5 to 6 points, although it could be more just because the Michigan GOP is in disarray. If you look at the news, you can look it up. The Michigan GOP is in complete disarray at the moment, and the Democrats have also done a really good job of clearing a potential primary field for Elissa Slotkin, preventing a messy primary that could cause problems in the general election. So for that reason, Michigan is likely Democratic. And now we are moving on to the very competitive states. And these are the states, there are 7 of them: Montana, Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Wisconsin, Ohio, and West Virginia, where the most money is going to be spent by both parties. The Republicans are currently sitting at 48 seats, and the Democrats are currently sitting at 45 seats. And I'm going to start by talking about Wisconsin and Ohio. So I'm going to start by talking about Wisconsin and why I think Wisconsin will be lean Democratic. Incumbent Senator Tammy Baldwin, a Democrat, is running for re-election. She was re-elected in 2018 by around, I believe, 7 to 10 points. It was either 7 points or 10 points. I don't remember which. But she ran a very good campaign and won her re-election campaign in a state that Donald Trump had carried in 2016 by under a point, and that Joe Biden carried in 2020 also by under a point. And she is seeking re-election, and I believe that because it's a presidential election year, Wisconsin will be more competitive at the Senate level, especially since the Republicans are trying to recruit a strong candidate here. However, on the same token, given the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin that was on April 4th, where the Democratic-backed candidate, the more liberal candidate, defeated the Republican-backed candidate, the more conservative candidate, by 11 points, I believe that Tammy Baldwin will not necessarily have a problem winning re-election. I don't believe she is in a whole lot of trouble here. I believe that she will win re-election probably by around 4 points. So it will be competitive, but I still believe that Tammy Baldwin will end up winning here. And then moving on to Ohio. And I'm categorizing Ohio as tilt Democratic. And the reason for that is there is kind of a repeat of 2022 here, where you have a messy Republican primary. You have some moderate Republicans running. I believe it's Matt Dolan who is running. His family owns the Cleveland Guardians baseball team. He's a state senator, and he sought the Republican nomination in 2022. I haven't seen any polling for Ohio yet, neither for the primary nor the general. I don't know if there is any polling other than internal polling. And incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown was reelected by 6 points in 2018, and the last time that he was up for election in a presidential election year was in 2012. Barack Obama carried the state by 3 points. Sherrod Brown won re-election by 6 points. So Sherrod Brown has shown his ability to outperform the Democratic candidate at the top of the ballot. And also Bernie Moreno, who is close with J.D. Vance, supported by J.D. Vance. I don't think that's an official endorsement by J.D. Vance. I don't think J.D. Vance has officially endorsed him, but he is a J.D. Vance-like candidate who could potentially cause trouble for the Republicans in the general election, similar to how J.D. Vance made a race that was not necessarily going to be competitive more competitive. And Sherrod Brown has also shown his ability to speak to the working class swing voters in Ohio, that is. And I believe that he will be reelected here. I believe it will be extremely competitive, But as of right now, given the fact that Bernie Moreno has gotten in the race and that Sherrod Brown is running for re-election, and given the results from 2022, and the fact that I haven't really seen any polling data to go off of here, I'm going to categorize Ohio as tilt Democratic, and I believe that Sherrod Brown will win his re-election campaign here. And now moving on to Texas. And for Texas, I'm going to categorize it as lean Republican. And the reason for that is Ted Cruz was reelected here in 2018 by around 2 points. And Ted Cruz has had several public, I don't want to call them scandals necessarily, but several public controversies, including in 2021 when there was a severe snowstorm in Texas and he flew to Cancun. He has created several public controversies that might not help his re-election campaign here. I believe he will be re-elected, but I believe he'll win his re-election campaign by around 3 to 4 points, and I believe that the Republican presidential nominee will probably outperform him in the state in 2024. And now moving on to Nevada. In Nevada, incumbent Senator Jackie Rosen was elected here in 2018. She was elected by a likely margin. It was somewhere in between 5 and 10 points. I believe it might have been closer to 10 points. I'm not exactly sure, though. But she defeated an incumbent Republican, Dean Heller. And I believe that she will win re-election here by around 2 points. And polling has currently shown that Joe Biden is trailing a Republican in the presidential race in Nevada. However, I believe with the ticket splitting we saw in 2022, where incumbent Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto was reelected by just under a point, whereas incumbent Democratic Governor Steve Sisolak was defeated by now Republican Governor Joe Lombardo in Nevada. I believe that even if the Democratic presidential nominee were to lose the state of Nevada at the presidential level, I believe that Jackie Rosen would be reelected. And for that reason, I'm categorizing Nevada as lean Democratic. And now we are on to the final 3 states, with the Republicans sitting at 49 Senate seats and the Democrats sitting at 48 Senate seats. And the first state I want to talk about here is the state of Arizona. And for Arizona, we have a decent amount of polling conducted by OH Predictive Insights. I'm assuming that stands for Ohio, though I could be wrong, so I'm just going to refer to it as OH Predictive Insights. 1,000 registered voters conducted between January 31st and February 9th. And I spoke about this poll in my last video last month on this topic. And in all these polls, Ruben Gallego, the Democratic presumptive nominee, is leading, and whether it's a 3-way race or a 2-way race. Incumbent Senator Kyrsten Sinema was first elected as a Democrat in 2018. However, she has since switched to be an independent. She still caucuses with the Democrats. However, she is an independent, and she's expressed interest in seeking re-election. And in these polls, there were 4 conducted with 4 separate Republican candidates: Kari Lake, Blake Masters, Karen Taylor Robson, and Doug Ducey. And 4 were conducted as a head-to-head matchup between Ruben Gallego and these Republican candidates, and 4 were conducted as a 3-way race between Ruben Gallego, each of these 4 Republican candidates, and Kyrsten Sinema. However, in all of these, Ruben Gallego is leading the Republican candidates and Kyrsten Sinema, and for that reason, because of the polling, because of the fact that Kari Lake lost in 2022, despite Katie Hobbs running a somewhat disorganized campaign and not running a strong campaign, and the fact that Blake Masters also lost to Mark Kelly in 2022, and the fact that the down-ballot Republicans also lost to the down-ballot Democrats in 2022. Adrian Fontes won the Secretary of State's race. I forget who the current Attorney General of Arizona is, but she's a Democrat. She won by around 500 votes, and the Democrats won all 3 of those statewide offices, which, with the exception of Secretary of State, had been previously held by Republicans. For that reason, I'm categorizing Arizona as lean Democratic. And now moving on to the final 2 states, Montana and West Virginia. And both parties are currently sitting at 49 Senate seats. So It's somewhat suspenseful, I would say, as we get towards the end of this half-hour video. And please remember to like the video, subscribe, comment down below if you have any questions on history or politics. I'd be happy to answer them. And now we're going to take a look first at West Virginia. And in the state of West Virginia, I have 3 separate polls that I'm going to take a look at here. This one, conducted January 20th, 2022, shows incumbent Senator, Democrat Joe Manchin, leading all 3 possible candidates: incumbent Republican Governor Jim Justice, incumbent Attorney General Republican Patrick Morrisey, and Republican Congressman Alex Mooney, by double digits against both Mooney and Morrisey and by single digits against Justice. However, then when you get to August, all 3 of these Republicans are now leading Joe Manchin, and this is August 2022, and then taking a look at February 2023, and I talked about this poll in my last video on this topic as well. Joe Manchin is leading both Patrick Morrisey and Alex Mooney, whereas Jim Justice is leading Joe Manchin by 10 points. And now Patrick Morrisey has said that he is running for governor. He has officially declared his candidacy for governor, so he is not seeking the Republican nomination to run for Senate. So it looks like the primary for the Republicans for 2024 is shaping up to be between Alex Mooney and Jim Justice. And Alex Mooney ran against a more moderate Republican, in a House race primary in 2022. West Virginia lost a congressional district during reapportionment, so it went from 3 congressional districts to 2 congressional districts, and Alex Mooney faced off against David McKinley, who had been endorsed by both Joe Manchin and Jim Justice, and Alex Mooney defeated David McKinley by around 20 points. So while Jim Justice might have a financial advantage, as he is a billionaire and can self-fund a campaign and will also be receiving money from the Senate Leadership Fund, which is Senator Mitch McConnell's political action committee, I believe that a Mooney-Justice primary would favor Alex Mooney. However, Justice is still leading Manchin in the general if he were to win. And for another 2 factors, Jim Justice has not yet declared that he would run, though he is getting closer and closer to declaring. All signs are indicating that he will run. However, Manchin has also not indicated either way, retirement or running for re-election. However, I believe he is going to run, but he has not declared his candidacy yet, and he said he will not declare his candidacy or decide to retire until the end of 2023. He will not make up his mind until the end of 2023. So then when you take a look at West Virginia, I'm going to categorize it as lean Republican for the time being, because even though I believe that Joe Manchin would beat Alex Mooney in the general election, it's still not guaranteed that Alex Mooney would win the primary, and it's still not guaranteed that Joe Manchin will seek re-election. And now, finally, taking the look at one final state, and that is the state of Montana. And here's some polling from February 2023. Once again, I talked about this poll in my last video. It's conducted by the Political Company. About 500 likely voters surveyed in this poll shows Jon Tester leading the 2 most likely Republican candidates, Matt Rosendale and Ryan Zinke, who are the 2 congresspeople from the state of Montana. Shows Jon Tester leading both of them by around 5 points. And it shows Jon Tester leading Governor Greg Gianforte, actually tied with Governor Greg Gianforte, and that's even at 45%. However, I believe Ethan Kelly from Let's Talk Elections pointed this out. It shows that Jon Tester kind of has a ceiling of support here, and I wanted to mention that, and I wanted to give Let's Talk Elections credit for that as well, pointing out that Jon Tester kind of has this ceiling of support where he's not getting above 45% really. And then when you look at the most recent poll conducted from February 21st, 2023 for the U.S. Senate in Montana, conducted by OnMessage, which is a BC rating from 538, 600 likely voters, it shows Matt Rosendale leading Jon Tester by around 5 points. And Jon Tester defeated Matt Rosendale in 2018. However, this is a presidential election year. And based on the polling, Jon Tester is a very strong candidate, probably the best candidate the Democrats could run here, and arguably the only candidate who the Democrats could run who has a chance of winning. He's the incumbent senator. He has won several close races. All of his Senate races that he has won have been close. He won in 2006 by under a point, won in 2012 by around 3, won in 2018 by around 3. So Jon Tester is a very strong candidate for the Democrats here. However, I believe since it's a presidential election year, since he kind of has that ceiling of support around 45% as of now, and this new poll conducted shows Matt Rosendale leading him, I am going to categorize Montana as lean Republican for the time being. Now, granted, taking a look at this map, the Republicans flip the states of West Virginia and Montana, whereas the Democrats hold all of their other states and the Republicans hold all of their other states. Now, this is the map for the time being. I believe it's the same map as last month. Maybe the margins are a little bit different. But as far as the overall composition of the Senate, it's the same. And until we start getting a clearer picture of who the nominees are going to be, what the polling is, it's not going to change that much. But that being said, it will change. And it appears that the Republicans, as of right now, are poised to retake control of the Senate, although the Democrats are still holding on to a lot of competitive seats in a year where the Senate map is not favorable to them. So make sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment down below. If you have any questions about history or politics, ask them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. I hope you all have a great day. Please remember to like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the video. My official April prediction is that the Republicans will retake the Senate, and we'll come back in May and take another look at all these Senate races. Once again, please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.